Hello and welcome back to a deep dive into Only Murders in the Building, brought to you by JCU Productions. This is the last week before Christmas, which is why we've got the elf costume. After editing the podcast from last episode, I do think that the audio does sound better with the new microphones and it's making things sound clearer. I am also thinking about moving the information behind me off of the board to make way for some more information. So next episode it'll probably be bare again. But before the last episode, I will showcase all the information gathered across all the episodes. But enough of me talking about random stuff. Let's get straight into Only Murders in the Building, Season 3, Episode 5, Love. After the shock of Charles's engagement last episode and the revelation that the lipstick from Ben's dressing room belonged to Joy, we have a peaceful opening to a voiceover from Joy about love, saying, love. You gotta love it. Everywhere you look, there it is. But in a city that never sleeps, how do you really know who the hell you're sleeping with? People can conceal some really dirty secrets, or fatally fatal flaws. Which sounds like it's alluding to Joy being the killer, but could this be a reference to someone else in our story? We hear a glass being shattered from Charles's apartment, while Oliver and Mabel are stood outside worried. Charles comes out and reveals that everything is fine and that Joy's just shattering sea glass for her aquarium. Mabel asks if Charles has spoken to Joy about the lipstick yet, to which Charles admits he hasn't, and says he's going to handle it in his own time. Oliver asks Mabel for fashion advice over what scarf to wear to meet up with Loretta, and we learn that Oliver has loved Loretta from the first day he met her. Mabel tells Charles that she can have a calm talk with Joy about the lipstick, woman to suspect woman. But Charles says that Joy isn't another Jan, and that it's important for him to be able to interrogate his murderous girlfriend/fiancée. Oliver questions Mabel whether she is going on a date, to which he strongly objects and says that Talbot has a lead on the case and that the two were going to stake out, and that the place had a dress code, hence the formal outfit. Oliver and Charles still say that it's a date, which starts to annoy Mabel, who still insists that it's a stakeout. Between two totally platonic, semi-professional investigators. Mabel concludes by saying that she is going to unmute their texts in case anything goes haywire, but Charles insists he will be okay. Joy's monologue continues, saying, "Is it possible you're sleeping next to a lunatic or a liar? Sure it is! But I always tell people, better to lose your mind loving than to live your life loveless." After the opening theme, Charles asks to speak with Joy, to which a bubbly Joy enters, still joyful over the proposal. Charles then tries to confront Joy about the ruby stripper lipstick by asking if he told her that they found it backstage in Ben's dressing room, and if she has any clue how it might have gotten there. But Joy isn't paying too much attention, repeatedly kissing Charles, and then says, "Hey Brazos, hang up your badge, okay? We're on a hiatus, remember?" Then she blows smoke off her finger gun, before laughing and walking out of the room. Is Joy trying to change the subject, or is she just generally naive? Charles tries to persist about the subject, but Joy starts shouting at President McKinley the fish, and she says that he's had his last strike and puts the slimy fin terrorist in solitary POTUS and puts him in a jug. Charles finally gets Joy's attention and tells Joy that someone wrote a threatening message on Ben's mirror with the lipstick and asks if she knows anything about it. Joy is outraged over the idea and asks if Charles really thinks that she had something to do with Ben's death. But before he answers, there's a knock on the door and Saz walks in with an engagement present. Joy is pleased to see her and says how much the two have missed her, to which Saz says apparently not enough to be cast as Charles's understudy in his new play, but she says that she's gotten over it, and reveals that she is doing stunts for Bakula next week in LA, to which Joy says to send her love, and that she misses his faith in her, and that he never accuses her of horrible things, and then tells Charles that she is going to taste test the cakes for the wedding on her own. Then tells him to stay home with Saz, and that maybe she wants to be interrogated, and walks out still annoyed at the fact that she was being accused. Next, we see Oliver turn up to Loretta's apartment. She comes to the door with other mitts and an apron before letting Oliver in and heading straight back to preparing the food while giving Oliver a quick welcome. Oliver exclaims that Loretta's small New York apartment is art as she looks in awe at everything around him. Loretta does say that her microwave is broken and so she has improvised with an oven, or as she says, a prehistoric broiler that she never uses, before checking that Oliver does like pork chops. Oliver does, and Loretta yet again talks about her broken microwave, saying she can make a good one with it, but now that it isn't working, it's thrown all her timing off. Oliver offers to help, but Loretta insists that he goes and takes a seat. As Oliver is walking around her apartment, he asks what this lever on the side of her wardrobe did, then pulled it as Loretta hurriedly tried to plead him not to, but it's too late, and the wardrobe flips down to reveal a bed. It was a fake wardrobe. We then go to Mabel's stakeout with Tobbit as she is looking even fancier than before. The two sit down at a small round table together. Tobbit had already ordered the two some stuff beforehand, but didn't know what Mabel's drink was. As the two are talking, on stage behind them, Jonathan walks out onto the stage at the piano bar and tells the audience that Johnny J will be singing for them tonight. Mabel is uncertain and questions why Tobbit thinks that Howard's sweet boyfriend would be the suspect. Tobbit says that Jonathan was a great suspect, being Ben's understudy. Who else had more to gain from him dying? But he had been following Jonathan around for a while now, and the best he could find was that he volunteers with Broadway Cares and has this fantastic weekly cabaret set. Mabel gets annoyed that Tobbit has invited her to the bar when he doesn't have a suspect, as he told Mabel to come as there was a lead for the case. Tobbit then says that it's managed to get him on a date, and that he did have to get a little creative to get Mabel there. Mabel orders a mezcal old-fashioned and stays on the date. Back in Charles's apartment, Saz is trying to unpack what just happened with Charles. She brings up the Arconia and says, abnormal amount of death in this place. By the way, are we sure the killer was after Ben and not you, Charles? I've been getting some vibes. I also have my ham radio, and there's chat of people wishing it was you instead of Ben. She then goes on to ask Charles about him and Joy. Saz does reveal that she's still seeing Jan both physically and romantically, which shocks Charles. He confides in Saz that he believes that Joy may be another killer, which surprises her as the two have known Joy for decades, and that Charles is getting the case and the engagement all mixed up, and that he needs to prove Joy isn't a murderer so he can continue with the wedding. But Charles says that he needs to prove it's not her, just so he can break up with her and not be in fear for his life like he was with Jan. Back on Oliver and Loretta's date, the two have finally sat down and are ready to eat. They both start trying to cut into their pork chops, which isn't working out too well, with Oliver commenting on how solid it is before finally just giving in and stabbing his fork into the chop and taking a bite. Only it seems the chop decided to take his tooth in retaliation. Both diners are stunned, to say the least, with Loretta profusely apologising in horror at what happened, but Oliver admits that he's not feeling any pain, and the two start laughing at the absurdness of what's just happened. Loretta comments on the snort Oliver does, and then reveals that she played a pig in the cruise ship production of Charlotte's Web in her 30s, but feels like she really honed her snort when she played Snowball in a black box production of Animal Farm. Oliver questions how many pigs she's played, and she responds, I don't know, playfully while snorting, and the two start chuckling to themselves, with Loretta saying, fucking pigs. Hey, you know who was a real fucking pig? Ben Glenroy. And at this point, Oliver is shocked, as I think we all were, as all anyone can think about is the lipstick with this same phrase on Ben's dressing room mirror. Loretta notices Oliver's energy has changed and that the colour has drained from his face, so asks if he's okay. Oliver says that he's fine, but asks Loretta if she ever said that phrase to Ben. But Loretta doesn't answer, changing the subject away from Ben. Loretta then asks Oliver if he trusts her and whether he wanted to get out of the apartment, and that she knows just the place for the turf. Back in the bar, Mabel and Tobbit are getting along. Mabel asks Tobbit who he hangs around with, to which he says it's tough to stay in contact with anybody when you're constantly travelling, and if you don't have anything like a partner to ground you and put down roots. And he says it's something that he thinks about. Back to Charles, and he and Saz are playing a game of Commit or Be Committed, where Saz is playing the part of Joy and Charles as himself. Saz starts asking Charles questions about sexual relations in the future and flashing the lights of the fish tank green or red, depending on if Charles has the correct answer or not. Charles then asks why Joy would want to be with him after over 30 years of looking at every flaw, and she still wants to be with him. Isn't that what a psychopath would do? Saz says it sounds like someone who loves him, but Charles can't believe that, and says, does his face look like a face that deserves joy? Saz tells Charles that his problem isn't that he's afraid of joy with a capital J, but joy with a lowercase j. After this realization, Charles admits he was crazy for believing Joy was the murderer. We then see the place Loretta was taking Oliver to, which was a ferry sort of ship that cost $4 to ride while it charted New York. Oliver asks if there is a specific location, but Loretta leaves it as a surprise while pulling out a flask and saying to Oliver, pick your poison, which obviously takes him aback as Loretta made the fucking pig comment and now also bringing up poison. Very suspicious. It turns out that Loretta is offering Oliver the choice between the flask and a joint. She says her 12th roommate, Babette Claus, gave it to her in 1978. Oliver questions whether this is Babette that was the chorus girl who got struck by lightning skinny dipping in Central Park, to which it was. Oliver revealed he rolled 10 for her with a purple streamer from Studio 54 that same year at Grace Jones's 30th birthday party, which Loretta was also at, and Oliver believes that it's the very one he rolled. Synchronicity or what? They then talk about how much of a shame it was that they didn't cross paths back then. Loretta claims she would have killed to be in one of his productions, but something always happened to screw it up. Loretta goes on to talk about how she was constantly rejected because her accent was too authentic or casting didn't like her, and that when she was a kid they called her Lucky Durkin because she won the school raffle 4 times. But since then, and then she trails off, saying that she might be cursed, and that's probably what she deserved. Oliver asks why she would think that, and Loretta doesn't reply, and just tells Oliver to open his mouth, and she blows smoke into it. Back in the club, Jonathan is still singing, and gets a standing ovation, and Topper and Mabel seem to be having a good time. Mabel then notices Jonathan was hugging someone in the crowd and wonders whether he could be cheating on Howard. Mabel describes the person to Tobbit and sees Jonathan give the guy an envelope. Tobbit is getting eager to see what Mabel is talking about and decides to get up to take a look for himself, which Mabel tries to stop as she doesn't want Jonathan to notice them. And then he bumps into a waiter who drops plates with a crash, definitely causing a scene. Everyone looks over, so the two stay crouched behind the table. But even after waiting a few seconds, Jonathan and the other man saw them when they peered over the table, and they got up to leave. Tobbit says that he believes he knows who the guy is. We then sail back to the boat with Oliver and Loretta getting close to one another, and Loretta apologises for her being weird about Ben earlier and that she just didn't want to talk about a dead person and ruin the mood. Oliver says that it's alright to talk about Ben, but the phrase that Loretta said during the dinner was very specific. Loretta agrees and said that she did call him that and reveals that she had a fight with Ben half an hour before he went on stage opening night. Ben said that Loretta was obsessed with him and had wormed her way into the show and that he didn't want to share the stage with a no-name. And Loretta says that's when she snapped and called him a fucking pig, and that was the last thing she said to him. We then see a flashback of Ben pushing Loretta against the railing of the lighthouse in the argument. Loretta tells Oliver that she was far from the only person in the theatre that thought that about him, and that he was an asshole to everybody, even his kind-hearted brother. And she apologises Oliver didn't get his opening night. And Oliver apologises back that Ben wasn't nice to her, and that he adores everything about her. Loretta then says the reason they are on the ferry as they approach a bridge, saying that when she was a girl, whenever she lost a tooth, her mum would take her out on the Mississippi River on the ferry boat, and that whenever they got underneath a bridge, they would throw the tooth overboard and make a wish. Oliver makes a joke about the Tooth Fairy being able to swim, and then puts two and two together, realising tooth and fairy. Tooth fairy! Oliver does the tradition and kisses Loretta after she asks him what he wished for. Back in the bar, Tobbit tells Mabel that the person Jonathan was with was Ben's celebrity doctor and that he came to visit Ben a few times the past year and that he only knows him as Dr. C. Mabel wants to know why he's talking to Jonathan and what Jonathan might be paying him for, and then says they should get out of the bar. Joy is back in Charles's apartment with 4 boxes of cakes with 20 different samples. Charles apologises, but Joy is still infuriated about Charles's accusation and says that she was backstage opening night because Howard came to her in a panic because Ben had a cosmetic emergency from being punched in the face and it left a big red mark which needed covering, which she did, and that her lipstick must have fallen out of her clutch while she was back there, but she didn't write on his mirror because she didn't kill Ben. Charles then reveals he was the one who hit Ben. We then see the same scene of Ben and Loretta at the lighthouse, but this time it's longer, and after Loretta screams and pushes Ben away, exclaiming, "Fucking pig," Charles comes over to see what's wrong, and Loretta tells him that Ben attacked her. Ben tells Charles to stay out of it, but Charles clobbers Ben in the face. Joy is speechless and wonders why Charles has been so adamant that she could have been the killer when he was the one who hit Ben that night, and asks how long he thought it was her. He says it wasn't for long, and that he didn't believe it could be his Joy, and that it was Oliver and Mabel that wasn't sure, which annoys Joy even more, that he was talking about this with other people and couldn't even tell her, and why would he still propose thinking she killed Ben? Charles tries to calm her down, but lets slip that his proposal to her was an accident. Damn it, Charles, of course! This upsets Joy, as she has loved Charles for ages. She then asks if he still wants to marry her now. Charles says yes, and that it was Saz who made him realise he did after the fish tank game. This just tips Joy over the edge, as she remembers all the years of Charles in her makeup chair, the two of them joking, little winks in the mirror, the kick in Charles's step when he hopped up looking good to go out onto set, and that she always thought the two of them had something special. So she looked past all the things in Charles that she didn't like. His ego, self-absorption, his psoriasis elbows, and that she had been trying to have an open dialogue of what they both wanted, but that she was kidding herself thinking that he was ready to open up to a woman as open as she is, and that she tried to tell herself that he could change, but now it's too late. Charles disagrees and says he now realises she is Joy and Joy, and he can embrace both. Joy pushes the plate of cakes into Charles's chest, saying, "Embrace this," before telling him the engagement is off and storming out. Back in Mabel's apartment, she shows Tobbit the murder board, which does include Tobbit. He then adds Dr. C onto a card to put onto the board. The two then kiss. Mabel and Tobbit, not Tobbit and Dr. C. We then see Oliver and Loretta on her pull-out bed in her apartment, where Loretta gets up saying she's going to draw them a bath, and Oliver decides to start looking around the place again and walks over to a bookcase in the corner and looks at photos until he spots a book which had a picture of Ben cut out from a magazine with Dickie in the background. He then gets understandably curious and pulls it out to see what else is in there, and it's page after page of magazine cuttings about Ben Glenroy. Throughout that whole scene, we hear a voiceover from Joy saying, "I will say one other thing about love. There are times when you've been totally blinded by the mirage of your own desires, and when the truth of who you gave your heart to, of who they really are, is suddenly staring you right in the face, it might be a sign that things just aren't meant to be, or worse." That was a very eventful episode, and it looks like the blame is back on Loretta this time. Why is she so obsessed with Ben? Did she seek revenge after the fight at the lighthouse? We'll have to wait to find out. Also, Saz bringing up that people were out for Charles, seeing what the case is for Series 4, that is insane that this information was snuck into this episode before we even knew what was going to be coming up next for the next series. But that's all we have time for this week. I don't think I'll be editing the murder board this week because I haven't got the cards yet and I need to edit and publish this for tomorrow. So I'll probably do a short video of that and post it on the channel if that gets done before next week. And then I can also share next week anyway. But it is the last week before Christmas, so I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, whatever you're doing. I hope you have a great time, and thank you for watching. So have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.